My mother kicked me out at 16 to give everything to my half-siblings. Now she returns 17 years later, demanding I pay for their college. But what I did destroyed her, and she never saw it coming. I'm 33 years old. I work in upper management at a tech company, and I make more money than I ever thought would be possible when I was 16 and sleeping on my grandparents' couch. The reason I'm mentioning that is because, like 2 months ago, my mother, Barbara, showed up at my door, demanding that I pay for my twin half-siblings' college. You know, the same kids she kicked me out of the house for when I was a teenager. And when I say she kicked me out, I'm not being dramatic. She literally put me on the street with a backpack and told me the twins deserved more than she could give me too. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning because this story is long and complicated and I need to tell it completely for it to make sense. My father, Christopher, left before I was born. So basically, it was always just my mother and me. We lived in a small apartment. She worked at a department store, and things were tight, but we were okay. Or so I thought. When I was like 11, almost 12, my mom met Kenneth somewhere, I think at a work thing or something, and suddenly he was at our house all the time. Kenneth was, how do I put it? Cold, I guess. Like he was never directly mean to me, but he also didn't exactly make an effort to get to know me or make me feel comfortable. I remember when my mom told me they were getting married, I had mixed feelings. Because on one hand, she seemed happy and that was good. But on the other hand, Kenneth looked at me like I was a piece of furniture that came included in the package, and that he would have preferred to leave behind. They got married when I was 12. And literally like 6 months later, my mom sat me down at the kitchen table and said, "I'm pregnant. You're gonna have siblings." Twin siblings, it turned out. Ethan and his sister arrived when I was 13, and at first everything seemed relatively normal. You know, babies in the house, chaos, diapers, all that. But gradually, I started noticing things were changing. My mom, I didn't have time for me anymore, which I partly understood because she had 2 demanding babies. But it wasn't just that. It was the way Kenneth looked at her when I asked for something, like I was an unnecessary expense. It was the way when I came home from school and talked about something from my day, my mom barely looked up from the twins. It was the way my 14th birthday was practically forgotten, because one of the twins was sick. By the time I turned 15, the tension in the house was obvious. Kenneth and my mom argued about money all the time, and I started hearing my name in those fights. Things like, "If we didn't have to pay for Jessica, we could," or, "The twins need this, but we have to buy that for Jessica." I started feeling like a burden, like my existence was everyone's problem. I stopped asking for things. I stopped talking at dinner. I basically became invisible in my own home, hoping that would help somehow. Spoiler alert, it didn't help. 2 weeks after my 16th birthday, a Tuesday afternoon, I came home from school and my mom and Kenneth were sitting in the living room waiting for me. The twins were with a babysitter or something. I don't remember well. My mom had that expression I already knew, the one that meant she had made a decision and wasn't going to change her mind, no matter what I said. Kenneth was just there with his arms crossed, looking at me like I was a nuisance. My mom said, "Jessica, sit down. We need to talk." And I sat on the edge of the couch with my backpack still on my shoulder, because something in my body already knew this wasn't going to be good. What she said was basically this: that things were very difficult financially, that with 2 small children, the expenses were many, and that Kenneth and she had decided they couldn't keep supporting me. She said, "You're already 16, you can work, you can support yourself. The twins are small, and they need us more." I remember I just sat there processing her words and thinking, is she telling to me what I think she's telling me? And then Kenneth spoke for the first time and said, "Your grandparents said you can stay with them for a while. We already talked to William and Rose." And that's when I understood. They were kicking me out. They were removing me from the house so they could focus on the twins. I tried to speak, tried to ask if this was serious, if they were really kicking me out, but my mom just kept repeating that it was best for everyone, that I was going to be fine, that I was old enough to understand. Kenneth wouldn't even look me in the eyes. They told me I had an hour to pack what I could carry and that William was on his way to pick me up. 1 hour. 16 years of my life reduced to 1 hour and a backpack. I went up to my room and started putting clothes and some things in the backpack. I was in complete shock. Like I couldn't even cry at that moment because I couldn't believe this was really happening. I kept expecting my mom to come upstairs and say it was a joke, that she was sorry, that of course she wasn't going to kick me out. But she never came up. William and Rose. My paternal grandparents, I mean from Christopher's side, even though he was never there, arrived exactly 1 hour later. They looked uncomfortable, even angry, and Rose's eyes were red like she had been crying. William said something to my mom that I couldn't hear, but his tone was harsh. I came down with my backpack and my mom gave me a quick hug and said, "This is for the best, Jessica. You'll see. You're going to be fine." Kenneth said nothing, just nodded toward the door. And just like that, on some random Tuesday at 6 in the evening, I stopped living with my mother. The next 2 years at William and Rose's house were, honestly, what saved me. They lived in a small house like 40 minutes from where I was before, so I had to change schools in my senior year of high school. But they did everything possible to make me feel welcome. Rose fixed up the guest room for me, William helped me get a part-time job at a coffee shop near their house, and they both told me over and over that I could stay as long as I needed. I finished high school working like 20 hours a week at that coffee shop, saving every penny I could because I knew I wanted to go to college and that nobody else was going to pay for that. During those 2 years, my mom called me maybe 5 times total. Short, awkward calls where she'd ask how I was and I'd answer, "Fine," and then silence. She never asked if I needed anything, never offered to help me with anything, never invited me back to the house, not even to visit. Kenneth never spoke to me after that day. The twins were like 3, 4 years old, and probably didn't even remember we ever lived together. It was like I had been erased from that family. When it came time to apply to colleges, William and Rose helped me with the forms, but they didn't have the money to pay tuition. I understood that perfectly. They were already doing so, much letting me live with them. I called my mom, one of those 5 times we talked, and asked if she could co-sign student loans with me because I didn't have credit yet. She said no, that she and Kenneth couldn't commit to that they had their own responsibilities. I mean, the woman who kicked me out of her house also wasn't going to help me go to college. She hung up saying, "I'm sure you'll find a way, Jessica. You've always been very independent." That's when Laura appeared in my life. Well, reappeared technically. Laura is Rose's sister, my great aunt, I guess, and she had been there at some family gatherings over the years, but we had never been close. When she found out about my situation with college and that my mom had refused to help me, Laura called me and said, "I'm going to co-sign your loans. You're going to go to college and you're going to make something of your life." And she did, without asking anything in return, without conditions, just because she believed in me, when my own mother didn't. I entered college with student loans that Laura co-signed, working 2 jobs during the school year and 3 during summers. I slept like 5 hours a night, lived on ramen and coffee. But I graduated in 4 years with a business administration degree and 0 help from my mother. Laura was at my graduation, William and Rose were there, but my mom didn't even respond to the message I sent her inviting her. And during those college years, my mom and I practically didn't talk, maybe a text message at Christmas and that was it. After graduating, I got an entry-level job at a tech company. Nothing glamorous. Basically, I did a little bit of everything, but it was a foot in the door. I kept living tight for several years, paying my loans, sharing an apartment with 3 roommates, but slowly moving up in the company. I worked more hours than anyone. I volunteered for every project. I learned everything I could. By the time I was 27, I was already a manager. By 30, I reached upper management, and now at 33, I'm at a level I never imagined reaching. I make good money, really good. I have my own apartment in a nice area. I can afford things I used to only dream about. And I did it all myself. Well, with the support of William, Rose, and Laura, but without a penny from my mother. Like 6 months ago, there was a family gathering for Rose's birthday, one of those big things with cousins and aunts and uncles and the whole family. My mom was there with Kenneth and the twins who are now 18. I went because I love Rose and wanted to celebrate with her, but I avoided my mom almost the whole night. At some point, Laura was proudly telling someone about my recent promotion. She mentioned my new title, and I saw my mom turn her head, paying attention for the first time. Barbara, that's my mom's name, by the way, came over to me later that night and said, "I heard you're doing very well at your job. Congratulations." It was awkward and forced, and I just said thanks, and walked away. 2 weeks after that gathering, a Saturday morning, there was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there were Barbara and Kenneth, standing at my door without warning. My mom had that fake smile she put on when she wanted something, and Kenneth looked as uncomfortable as always. I said, "What are you doing here?" And my mom said, "Aren't you going to invite us in?" Honey, we need to talk to you about something important. Something in my stomach twisted. But I let them in, mostly because I was curious what the hell they wanted after all these years. They sat in my living room and my mom started with, "You have a very nice place, Jessica. Clearly you're doing well." And I just waited, because I knew something was coming. Kenneth finally spoke and said, "The twins are going to start college in the fall. They were both accepted to good schools." My mom added, "But tuition is very expensive. Even with financial aid, we need like $40,000 more between the two of them to cover the first year." And then came the punch, my mom said. "And we thought you could help us. Your family, after all. And clearly you have the resources now." I sat there processing what they had just said. The woman who kicked me out of her house at 16, who refused to help me with college, who basically erased me from her life to focus on the twins, was now in my living room asking me, no, demanding that I give her $40,000 to pay for those same twins' college. The audacity was incredible. I said, "Are you serious?" And my mom said, "Jessica, they're your siblings. They deserve a good education." Kenneth added, "If you can afford it, it's the right thing to do for the family." And that's when something in me broke, or rather, something that had been cracked for years finally exploded. I told them, "Family? Are you really going to use that word with me? You kicked me out of the house because you said the twins deserved more, remember that? You put me on the street at 16? My mom tried to interrupt, but I kept going. "No, I'm not done. You refused to help me with college. You didn't co-sign my loans. You basically told me to figure it out on my own." And I did. I figured it out on my own. I worked my ass off for years. I graduated, I built a career, all without you. And now you show up here expecting me to give you money? For what? So you can give the twins everything you never gave me? My mom went pale and Kenneth stood up from the couch saying, "Don't be dramatic, Jessica. We're just asking for help." And I also stood up and said, "The answer is no. I'm not giving you a penny. The twins can do exactly what I did. Work, get loans, earn it. And now I want you to leave my house." My mom started crying, literal crocodile tears, saying things like, "How can you be so selfish, after everything we did for you?" And I laughed. I seriously laughed, because the irony was too much. I told them, "Get out now before I throw you out." Kenneth looked at me with those cold eyes he always had, and said, "We always knew you were ungrateful." My mom added through sobs, "This isn't over, Jessica." And they left. But I knew it wasn't finished. I could feel it. And I was right, because 3 days later, my mom showed up at my work. She arrived at the company reception and started making a scene, yelling that she needed to talk to her daughter, that I had stolen money from her, completely crazy and false things. Security had to escort her out while she screamed that I was a terrible daughter and that I was going to regret it. It was humiliating. My colleagues saw everything. I had to explain to my boss what was happening. But that wasn't the worst. Like a week later, I arrived at my apartment after work, and there was my mom, sitting on the entrance steps waiting for me. I said, "What are you doing here? Leave before I call the police." She stood up and started walking toward me, saying, "You're going to help us, whether you want to or not. Those kids are your blood." I backed toward the building door, but she grabbed my arm, hard, and screamed in my face, "You can't just abandon your family." And something in me reacted. I pushed her so she'd let go, and she stumbled backward. Several neighbors came out hearing the commotion, and my mom started screaming that I had attacked her, that I had hit her, making a whole show. One of the neighbors had already called the police, and when they arrived, my mom was still hysterical. The cops separated us, took statements from the neighbors who had seen everything, and confirmed that she had grabbed me first. I filed an official report, and the next day I went to court and got a restraining order against Barbara. The order specifies that she can't come near me, my house, my work, nothing. When William and Rose found out about everything that had happened, including the physical incident, they finally cut ties completely with Barbara. Rose told my mom that what she had done to me since I was 16 was unforgivable, and that what she had just done was the straw that broke the camel's back. My mom tried to play the victim, saying everyone was against her, but William simply told her that she had made her bed and now had to lie in it. Kenneth never said anything through all of this. Typical. Like a month after getting the restraining order, I took Laura to dinner at a nice restaurant. I gave her a gift. It was a bracelet I had made with an inscription that said, "Thank you for believing in me." Laura cried. She told me she hadn't done anything special, but I told her she had done everything, that without her I wouldn't be where I am. She's more my mother than Barbara ever was. You know what I mean? Laura taught me that family isn't just blood, it's who's there when you really need them. Like 3 weeks ago, I received a message on social media from Ethan, one of the twins. The message basically said, "Hi Jessica, I know things are complicated with Mom, but I'd like to get to know you if you want. I don't know much about what happened, but I've been asking around and I think I owe you an apology for things I didn't even know about." I didn't respond immediately because I didn't know what to think. On one hand, he's my half-brother and he had nothing to do with the decisions Barbara and Kenneth made years ago. On the other hand, responding potentially means opening a door to all that toxic family dynamic again. I talked to Laura about it and she told me, "Only you can decide that. But that kid didn't choose any of this, just like you didn't choose it either." I responded to Ethan a few days ago, telling him I'm willing to talk, but slowly. No pressure, no involving Barbara or Kenneth. He agreed. We're going to grab coffee next week and see what happens. I don't have high expectations, but I guess I'm willing to give him a chance because he's at least trying, which is more than Barbara ever did. The restraining order against my mom is still in effect, and I plan to renew it when it expires. I have no interest in having Barbara in my life after everything that happened. Kenneth neither, to be honest. William and Rose are still an important part of my life. I see them every 2 weeks or so. Laura and I talk almost every day. Those are the people who chose to be there for me. Those are the people I consider my real family. Do I regret how things turned out? I don't know if regret is the right word. I regret that my mom made the decisions she made. I regret that she decided I was expendable when I was 16. But I don't regret the path I took after that because that path made me who I am now. I'm strong because I had to be. I'm independent because I had no other choice. I'm successful because I worked for every penny and every opportunity. If my mom had continued being part of my life, who knows? Maybe I'd be different. Maybe not. Last week, Ethan sent me another message asking if we were still on for coffee. I told him yes. I don't know what's going to come out of this. If we're going to build some kind of relationship, or if it's going to be awkward and we'll leave it there. But at least I'm willing to try with him because he's making the effort that Barbara never made. And that counts for something, I guess.